Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every other Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
I watched Amends, watched it with a critical eye and everything, and I still don't like it any better.
Yeah, it's not that great of an episode. All right. We are about to begin our discussion of Amends, which was written and directed by Joss Whedon. And the DVD blurb is, as the Christmas holiday approaches, Angel is tormented by visions of his past victims, including Jenny Calendar, who want him to kill Buffy.
Sort of. See, I mean, I get that they kind of want him to kill Buffy, but I always thought of it as more just messing with him. Trying to get him to do anything to become evil again.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that the first wanted him to kill Buffy as they wanted him to take pleasure in Buffy so that he would become Angelus again, is what I read from my watching the episode and the first basically saying that exactly, but you know. So we start in Dublin, Ireland, 1838, and there's snow all around and Christmas carols and a guy rushing through the street looking all worried, and then he's pulled back by a gorgeous man with a flawless accent, might I say.
So I'll take me winnings my own way.
I like the advice that he gives. That a man playing cards should have a natural intelligence or a great deal of money.
Yeah.
It's very true.
It is true.
And it's really good advice for gambling. You need to be able to like count cards or have a lot of money.
Yes. So this is the first of a series of flashbacks that we get. It's actually just a couple of flashbacks that we get to Angelus's victims throughout the years. And this is Daniel, who's, apparently owes a debt to Liam, I assume, before Angel was turned. And now Angelus is collecting on that just in time for Christmas. So he bites
and
Daniel.
right before his wedding.
Right before his wedding. Oh, yeah. We learned that a little bit later. He bites him, and it cuts to Angel's bedroom in present day as he wakes up from the dream, sits up in bed, and is all distraught. And then we go to Sunnydale, like the main stretch. Everybody's out, and it's also Christmas time, but no snow everywhere. In fact, it's quite balmy. Yet everybody's still bundled up throughout this episode, which I find hilarious. They're like, oh, it's so hot. It's so hot. And they're still wearing like coats and hats and stuff.
Yeah, I noticed that throughout the entire episode, that we talk a lot about how hot it is, but we're also dressed for nippy weather.
Yeah.
And at the very ending scene, I have some notes on Joyce's.
Okay.
Because what are we doing? We'll talk about it when we get there.
We'll get there. So Angel's walking along. Again, there's more Christmas carols in the background and a Santa shouting Merry Christmas. And like literally, I don't know how like unaware of each other they are in this moment, but the fact that they almost flat out run directly into each other, like, you have to really not be paying attention to run into anybody like that in the street. But, like, you're, like, true love, the person that is, like, your soulmate, to just be within an inch of each other before you realize each other's there. It was just
it also doesn't make sense because they're always sensing each other. Like, there is numerous scenes where like one of them will be near the other one and they just kind of stop and
they just know
so in this scene they just kind of like walk into each other,
like it's a half an inch apart from them, like full on colliding and falling to the street, and I'm just like, that's a bit much.
And where'd all these people come from? There's never people in Sunnydale.
It's Christmas time.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like if you're gonna be someone who lives in Sunnydale at all, like, winter's gotta be the worst, right? It's longer nights. The vampires can be out all the more. You know, maybe like Sunnydale needs to have a setup to where they celebrate Christmas in the middle of summer or something, just to give it a little bit more
Yeah.
more chance for them to not just all horribly be murdered. Anyway, so they're awkward because, yeah, this is apparently the first time that they've seen each other since Buffy told them that they couldn't see each other anymore. And
Which time? Sorry, I know which time. I just couldn't help it.
Buffy asks if he's shopping and then realizes that's a dumb question. And as they're kind of continuing to exchange awkward pleasantries, Angel sees Daniel just standing in the street behind her and starts to just panic at the sight of him. Buffy asks what it is, and he is just frozen in fear. And then we get credits, and that's that. I feel like there's going to be a lot of that situation where it's just like, all right, this is the scene, this is what happens, and that's that. Next scene. So we're at the high school.
Yeah, and Buffy is telling Xander and Willow about how Angel had acted the night before and took off, and Xander's being very sarcastic and makes several really petty, catty comments about Angel having killed someone and, he, tortured Giles and everything. And so Buffy actually eventually is like, that's enough.
Yeah.
She's like...
you know it's bad when Buffy actually says something about the way Xander's acting.
Yeah. And then Willow talks about how hard it is to be alone at the holidays. And then they talk about their Christmas plans. And Buffy says she's doing roast beast, which I love. I love that. Love references to Dr. Seuss. And then Willow mentions that she's Jewish and not everyone worships Santa. Although she's commented before that she goes to Xander's house to celebrate Christmas. So she's done that in the past. And then she mentions the stuff that her and Oz had plans, but that's off. Yeah. And Xander comments that he is going to sleep outside on the grass like he does every year, which is the first we've heard about it. And then Cordelia, who is nearby, answers after Xander makes it sound like he does it to commune with nature and stuff. Cordelia says, I thought you slept outside to avoid your family's drunken Christmas fights. And he says, yes, and that was a confidence I was hoping you'd share with others. I'm like, no, that's not, you have broken the unwritten rule of relationships. You don't share stuff like that.
Well, my comment on that was like, I feel like that's something that Willow would already know.
Yeah. And I don't really know why Buffy wouldn't know it either.
Yeah, it's not like he's super secret about his home life being terrible. It's pretty, he doesn't talk about it constantly, but it's very obvious.
Well, and Willow would know.
Yeah.
Because Willow used to go to his house to celebrate Christmas, and they used to sleep in each other's beds in footy pajamas and stuff like that. So, I mean, she would know what his home life was like.
Yeah.
Then Cordelia says that she'll be in Aspen skiing, which I'm guessing, her dad hasn't got caught yet. Because it's really, really close to the time her dad gets caught. But within the next 3 months. So this is probably her last big trip with her family.
Yeah.
Unless maybe she gets spring break. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember when we start to see her not have money anymore. I keep thinking, though, that...
we only see it when she's working in the store, right?
I guess so. I kind of wish that there was a hint
more than that
to foreshadow it a little bit better. But I could kind of see a reality in which they're already aware that it's coming and they're just trying to spend the money they still have while they have it before everything gets taken away, kind of deal. The last hurrah. They know there's only so much more time left.
It's very possible.
So, Cordelia leaves and Buffy makes a comment that she's reverted to form, and Willow's just like, well, we have to cut her some slack because we're awful people. Xander says that's the Christmas spirit, and Willow reminds him that, still Jewish, and she's kind of talking about, forgiveness is pretty much a big theme with me this year. And as she's talking, you can kind of tell that something's happening, and then she turns to see that Oz is standing right there. There's a great little look between Oz and Xander that I just delight in. And the fact that Xander is just the most uncomfortable. Like, he has his arm, so it's a couch, and Willow and Xander are on opposite ends of the couch, and Xander has his arm on the back of the couch, but still, like, not even close to Willow, and as soon as Oz is there, he, like, pulls it in and then completely, like, turns himself to where his back is facing Willow.
And it's awesome.
Yeah. And they say, hey, and then we cut to a classroom where they're kind of hashing some things out.
Where they have a conversation that kind of for both of them, but most definitely on Oz's side, is way, way too mature for any teenage boy to have. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Which also is something I will say later in the episode as well.
Yeah.
But at this one, when he does his little thing about how much he misses her, like an arm or a torso, that's not really teenage boyish. Like, maybe a grown man.
It's pretty extreme. And I've mentioned this before. I really would have liked this separation to last a little bit longer, but when this is the way that Oz is describing how he's feeling, and
we understand
why he would come back so fast. I think where this falls apart is what they end up doing with him in season 4
which is next season.
Yeah, because he at this point, like, she cheated on him, and then relatively soon afterwards, he's so pained by not being around her that he's willing to forgive her and kind of rush into something that he's said that he really probably should have needed time to process, but he's missing a torso if she's not around. It's just I don't know. It's one of those things where the way it's said, like there's a level of maturity to it, but there's also a level of immaturity to it, because that's a way of framing a relationship that's not super healthy, if you understand what I mean. Like, it's a little too intense for what I would frame as a healthy relationship. And we see this again later on. I think there's an interesting bit of foreshadowing where he says when he saw her with Xander that he never felt that way before when it wasn't a full moon. And I think that could kind of play into some of the stuff that happens in season 4, especially when he comes back after they split and turns into a wolf outside of the full moon because of his emotional state and his jealousy. So it's kind of a interesting little bit there that foreshadows something that does come in season 4 that does pay off. I guess it's another, if you love something enough to let it go and let it lead a better life, and maybe that's how Oz felt in season 4. It's been a while since I've seen those episodes, but here it just seems like Oz would not leave Willow for anything, and then next season he leaves. And then he comes back, which makes sense, and then he leaves again, and then we never hear from him again. I like the Willow-Oz relationship for a lot of things, but it was kind of rushed at the end, and then there's other things we'll get into there. But I think that this section here could have done a lot to develop Oz as an independent character and not just Willow's boyfriend, who everybody loves because he's so cool and, has all the funny, sarcastic lines, but really developed him into more of a three-dimensional, really cool, independent character that would, go and hunt vampires with Giles and Larry. Basically, I just want Wishverse Oz. I got a taste of him, and I want that independent Oz that's just going to go and do stuff and be maybe part of the team even without it being a I'm here because of Willow vibe. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they discuss it, and he says that he would be willing to give it another shot, and she's just all worked up, and then says, so do you want us to hug now? And he said, yeah, I'm good with that, and they give each other a hug, and that's that. They're back together, sort of, working on it.
Yeah.
They're in the process.
Yeah. And they both look very happy during the hug.
Yeah. There is another bit that I wonder, because I know that there's talks about if Seth Green had stayed on and they would have continued the relationship forward, that he would have been the one to die that would have caused Dark Willow instead of Tara. Mm-hmm. And there's a line here that I wonder if they were actually planning this far ahead, where Willow's trying to say that the stuff with Xander is over, and he's just like, I don't know that it will ever be over between you two. And I just kind of thought, wouldn't it have been interesting if it had gone to plan and Oz would have been the one dying and then Xander would have been the one to bring Dark Willow back to the light kind of deal of how that would have even layered in more. Like, it still layers in, but especially if this idea of Oz always being kind of concerned that there's a chance that there's something still going on between Willow and Xander, and then when Oz dies and causes Willow to lose herself, that Xander would be the one to bring her back. I think that there could have been something played with that, but obviously we love Tara. We stan Tara, so we'll take the bad with the good, or however you want to phrase it. But I did notice that little line there, and I do think it's true, even though we end up with a certain amount of bi-erasure later on in the series. I think there is always going to be something between Willow and Xander.
Yeah, I don't know. I never really saw it as bi-erasure. I mean, it's fairly normal that when someone has their first experience of being attracted to the same sex, when they've only been attracted to the opposite sex, that the majority of the time kind of go all out with, I'm gay or a lesbian or whatever. And a lot of times as they get older, they realize, I don't have to go one extreme or the other. It can be both. So I don't know if it's erasure or just kind of her developing in a natural way. Because, I mean, what are they, like 21?
Yeah.
22 when the show ends?
And that's kind of like, they're so young. It comes back down to that principle of this is...
I mean, I can see where a lot of people think that it is. And like,
yeah. Well,
in a show, things are a lot of times different, but...
Yeah, it comes back down to that principle of this is not a single person's outlook at that time. This is a team of writers choosing to send this message out that Willow, quote unquote, turned gay, which is a phrase that she actually kind of used. Like, she says, "Oh, I'm gay now," like in places, and that's just dumb. But it's also a product of its time. And what I will say, I think I've said this before, but you can analyze and question a fictional character, but if you are talking with a real person, like a real life person who has seemingly had relationships with one gender all their lives and then changes and then identifies differently, then that is valid, and that person is valid, and they can identify however they want to identify, because that is their journey. And because of that, like if I knew Willow IRL and she told me that this was her journey, I'd be supportive and be like, yeah, that's great. You're now identifying as gay, and that's fabulous. But since I'm reading it as a fictional text, I can analyze it further and be like, I feel like she might be bi.
That is completely valid to a fictional character. In my experience, that's how most people develop, or how a lot of people develop. Kind of the natural progression. And, everyone's pretty much on a spectrum.
Yep.
And you can be way more than one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Way more than one thing.
Yeah. We'll get into a lot of that representation later on in the series, I'm sure. But yeah.
It always felt very tokeny to me.
Yeah, it happens. It's 90s and early 2000s. It's gonna be.
Well, and I mean, it was really brave what they did at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
But today, it is very tokeny.
Yeah.
And you can see it, Okay, we should probably keep going to the next scene. I can see. We're going to talk a lot.
This is how little we care about this episode. We're just going to start talking about, completely other parts of the series.
Yeah. I get it's an important episode. It's especially considering what happens in season 7, but it has always felt like just filler to me.
Yeah.
And it's so dramatic.
Everything's
so dramatic in it. It's just oh.
It's not even that it's filler, because a lot happens to it, but a lot progresses in it, but it all progresses in a way that's just this is where we want our characters to be, instead of a natural progression. Instead of earning Willow and Oz back together, they're just okay, we want Willow and Oz back together. Instead of earning Buffy and Angel back together, they're okay, we want Buffy and Angel back together. I'm just
Yeah, because they're back together at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
And it never actually happens. Like, okay, let me rephrase that. They're at the beginning of the next episode. They're like a relationship again.
Yeah.
You're never like, wait, how, when? What? Apparently, David likes to do that a lot because, that happens in Bones too. And it was very frustrating. I don't know if you've ever watched that show.
I watched bits and pieces, but no, I don't know the references well enough to know where it interconnects, but that's funny. Proceeding onwards, we're at a Christmas tree lot, and Buffy and Joyce are perusing the trees, and Joyce suggests that maybe they should get one that's been sprayed with fake snow, because it would be very Christmassy. And then she leans in a little bit with the guilt trip and asks Buffy to invite Faith, and this is again kind of one of those, we want Buffy and Faith to be on good terms again, and this one I can buy a little bit more, but it still feels like we want these two characters to be in this spot, so they're just gonna be in this spot. Buffy kind of reiterates that they don't really hang out or talk or make eye contact, and Joyce lays on the guilt trip, and then Buffy says that she'll ask her, and as they continue on, Buffy suggests that maybe Giles should come, and Joyce shuts that down.
Yeah, real quick.
And then, as they continue to look at trees, Buffy notices an area where a bunch of the trees have died and is offered the hell of a deal on one of them if she wants to take one home. And she's just like, nah.
Yeah, I think that's weird. Because, why would he say, I'll offer you a hell of a deal on it? Shouldn't he be, paying someone to haul them away? Is he really trying to make this sale?
Hey, I give him props. You gotta be a good salesman to try to sell a dead tree. You gotta really commit to be like, all right, this might be my opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So then we get a few quick cuts, a dream sequence where we see candles and artifacts and 3 figures chanting, and they have no eyes. Ooh, no eyes. Instead they have these runes branded over their eyes. And we'll see a whole lot more of them much later in the series.
Yes.
But then Angel wakes up frightened and still trying to figure out what's going on. And yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of flashy cuts in this episode.
It's very, very disjointed.
It's a real big fan of the fade transitions and the, quick flashes. It's very artsy fartsy.
So now we have Buffy at Faith's, I don't want to say apartment, because it's not.
No, it's a motel room.
Motel?
Yeah, it's a motel room. Faith's motel.
Which, can vampires walk into motel rooms?
Probably.
I think that they can, because
I think they did. I think they did before, didn't they? Didn't Kakistos and all of those attack her first episode?
Why would she stay there? Well, I get she probably doesn't have a choice.
She doesn't really have a lot of options because nobody wants to take care of this poor girl that's desperately in need of someone to take care of her.
The script note says that her room is the same as always, except there is one sad, forlorn string of Christmas lights strung above the door.
Forlorn Christmas lights.
Which the Christmas lights never really got to me in this episode until I read that, and then I'm like, oh. Anyway, she's trying to get the TV to work, and Buffy comes in and invites her for Christmas, and Faith is like, your mom made you, right? And Buffy's like, no. And then says she has a big party to go to, and Buffy's like, yeah, okay. And then she leaves. That's basically it. It's just there for the invite.
I like how at the end of every scene we're just like, and that's it. That's the scene.
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm going to mention pick a scene that is my absolute favorite in this episode, it'll be this next one.
All right, take us away.
This is awesome.
Yes.
We are now at Giles' apartment, and he is attempting to cook, and here's someone at the door, so he opens it, and it's Angel. And Giles does such an amazing job throughout this entire scene.
Yeah.
He stops and just they stare at each other, and Giles is like, hello. And Angel says, I'm sorry to bother you. So Giles does this, like, just disbelieving little laugh. Like, I'm sorry, could that coming from you? And Angel says, I need your help. And Giles, and he's got this intense, angry face on that you don't see very often. But he's like, and the funny keeps on coming.
Yeah.
Anyway, Giles agrees to help him and, like, walks off. And Angel kind of stands there for a minute and says, I can't come in unless you invite me. And then Hot Giles returns with a crossbow pointed at Angel's heart. And it's just like, I'm aware of that. Come in.
I need a shirt that just says Hot Giles Returns. I need that on a shirt.
That would be a good idea for a shirt.
Oh, man. So, yeah, Angel comes in and kind of starts talking about his dreams that he's been having and says that he's been living past events and that they're so vivid and he needs to know why he's here. And Giles suggests, like, back on Earth, and Angel confirms that, yes, he should be in a demon dimension suffering an eternity of torture. And Giles is actually, says he's not particularly inclined to argue with that, which is another great line. Man. So, yeah, this basically sets up Angel is trying to figure out why he's here, why he was freed, and Giles offers that would give him peace of mind, and Angel says that it might, and Giles says, do you really think that that's something you ought to have? And as he does that, he actually leans down to put down the weapon, and you can see Ginny Calendar standing behind him, and oh man, is that a shot.
Yeah. And, like, it's weird, because, like, we know it's not Ginny.
Yeah.
But she's, like, looking at Giles all sad. Like, she misses him.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know is part of the act, but it's like, wow, that's weird.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Some people's weird is other people's good. But Giles continues to say that if Angel were to become complacent about his existence, it might turn out rather badly. Angel's kind of checked out at this point and is completely focused on Ginny, who appears to be, like, stroking Giles's shoulder and all of this stuff. Giles doesn't react at all until he notices how distracted Angel is and tries to figure out what's going on. And Angel says, don't you see her? And Giles looks, like, right through her, not seeing anything. And Angel slowly starts to get more and more freaked out and then says that he can't, and he runs out. And Giles is just there, very confused about what just happened.
Yeah, but now he knows that there is actually something wrong with Angel.
Yeah, something's going on. Something's weird.
Like, this isn't good.
This isn't good. This is, in fact, an unstable vampire.
Unstable vampire. That sounds like the name of a book. I might have to write that book.
Is it
vampire?
Is it gonna be
at least a short story,
a self-help book for vampires? The Unstable Vampire. So yeah, I mentioned before, and this is where I'm going to mention it again, but I really wish that they had gone a route where Angel came back and instead of meeting up with Buffy first, he met up with Giles first, and we would have just gotten a lot more stuff like this, because this is amazing, and I think that that would have been a much more interesting way to bring Angel back and reintroduce him to the cast as something that Giles was keeping from Buffy rather than Buffy keeping from everyone else. God, yeah, this scene's great, and they play off of each other so well, and I think they just both did a fantastic job of just playing how uncomfortable David plays this scene and how just the spectrum of emotions that Giles goes through.
Giles is very badassery here.
Oh, man.
It's very nice.
It is a nice scene. Hot Giles returns.
He does.
So we cut back to Angel's mansion. He's asleep, and he has a dream about another victim of his.
And like, until this episode, have we even seen Angel's bed since he went bad in season 2? Like, it's almost like the bed isn't always there. It's just kind of a...
not that I know of.
Yeah. It struck me as weird when I saw him asleep in the bed like multiple times in this episode.
Yeah.
It's like, did you just get a new bed or Wait, I'm trying to show it off. Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, it's a dinner party again. Appears to be Christmas time. And there's a maid, I guess, named Margaret, and she is dealing with this gorgeous man with this flawless accent.
And very much, I know that in this episode, the entire thing is him, like, wanting to bite her and take her blood, but very much shades of sexual assault in this scene. It's just like, oh my gosh. And you see the look on her face when she realizes what she's going to have to do.
At the end of the...
keep from getting fired and not being able to take care of her little boy. And it's just like, it's just a thing that happens all the time. And you're just watching it like, oh my God.
Yeah.
How dare you, Angel? How dare you? And then he gets vamp face and bites her. And it's just kind of like relief. Oh, that's not that bad. Even though it is, because he killed her. But like, that's kind of the way I felt about it. Oh, he's just gonna, kill her for her blood. That's not as...
Yeah. Well, there's when you get into like the metaphors of it all, because that is exactly what the intent is a lot of times when you talk about a vampire biting a human is that assault. At the end of this scene, wrote in my notes, the rape analogy is strong with this one.
It is.
And that's what the scene is. I mean, this is a scene of Angelus assaulting this woman, and apparently going to enjoy her son as a dessert, which makes it even grosser.
Yeah.
So yeah, Angelus, not a good dude. We knew that, but that's that scene.
Is it weird that I think the killing's not as bad as what I thought he was going to do? I mean, I honestly felt like when I knew that it was Angel and that he was what he was planning to do, but you kind of get lost in the scene, and then when that happened, I was relieved, and like, I can't be the only person who thinks that.
Well, and I think for me, I feel like it's still the same scene. Like, I think it's still in the way that the show's structured and the way that the show takes real life issues and then puts fangs on it. I think that it could still be read as a sexual assault scene. That's what it is. It's a sexual assault scene. That's what it's framed to be, and that's why it's here. And it works as a way of showing something that we know to be true. That sometimes it isn't just the bite. Sometimes it is the other thing, and then maybe the bite. Or sometimes it's the other thing several times, and then the bite. Because it turns out, evil vampire.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of an interesting show versus tell situation, where a lot of times it says that it's better to show than tell when you're talking about your writing. You do better to show your audience what's happening instead of just tell them what's happening. This is an interesting situation because the words speak louder than the actions themselves, because the action is just a vampire biting a victim, which we've seen 1,000 times on this show. But the words of what's being discussed frame it in that new light, and then you see it differently, and you're like, oh, ooh.
Yeah, and he says it like he said it 100 times before, and it's like, Liam, did you do stuff like that?
Oh, man.
With the servants before you became a vampire? Because no.
Oh, yeah. Liam, also a bad dude.
Right, but
and when we get into
that kind of bad, or was he just get drunk and gamble and sleep with women a lot?
Hard to say. It's possible for sure, but it's not. It's never confirmed one way or the other. Angel, just by and large, is a very dark character, and like even with the soul, even after that and making amends and his redemption journey, there's a lot of terrible things that he does as an ensouled vampire, trying to be a better person and then just giving up. And the whole idea of the redemption process being an analogy for addiction and having relapses and things like that is explored a ton in Angel the series. This is just like the most addicting stuff for Angel, and here we, like in this episode, we will see him struggling with this, because you can see later in the episode how close he comes to actually assaulting Buffy. because of the dreams and everything else that the first is planting in his head and reminding him of how he felt when he did stuff like this. This was the best, like Angelus. This was like the best night ever. And he just did it over and over again because this was his favorite thing to do. So as he's biting her, she starts to collapse to the floor, and behind her is Buffy. Modern day Buffy, just hanging out, looking through the crowded party and just in shock at what she's witnessing. And then we cut to Angel's bedroom and he wakes up, and then we cut to Buffy's bedroom and she wakes up. So
she gets to witness this.
How? I understand, like, Slayers having shared dream space. I'm fully on board with Slayers having shared dream space. When did Buffy and Angel start having this level of shared dream space where Buffy just gets to be in his dream like this?
I don't think that they do. I think it's something the first did.
It's possible, but I don't really know. Like,
or the first gave that dream to Angel, and the powers that, can, like, the powers that be, even though that's not really a thing in Buffy, gave Buffy the dream so she would know what was happening.
I like that thought process more, because I'm going to talk later about larger beings manipulating us as pawns in as we get towards the end of this episode. So, like, there's some stuff to chew on there for sure. But yeah, it could be that the first is implanting these dreams to make Angel turn, and then some other higher power or, something with its own agenda decides to figure out a way to make it to where Buffy has a gateway into his dreams. I could see that. But yeah, okay. That was that scene. We cut to Angel's mansion. He is exiting his bedroom, and Jenny's just there, chilling. She asks if he's had trouble sleeping, and he's trying to deny that she's there and telling her to leave him alone and all of that. And there's a line here that I actually wrote down because I think it's an interesting line, and I don't get it in the first canon, but it may just be, again, the first messing with Angel. But the first replies when Angel says, "Leave me alone. I can't. You won't let me." And I don't know what to crunch on there. What's the important bit? But for some reason that stood out to me as, if you're talking about evil, as the first is evil, right? Because that's what it is in this episode. The first is evil, and in this moment, evil, the manifestation of evil, is telling Angel, you won't let me leave you. You won't fully get rid of me ever.
Never really thought of that line before like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of, there's a lot in those words.
So they continue talking. Angel starts to say that he's sorry.
You're sorry. For me? Don't bother. I'm dead. I'm over it. If you want to feel sorry for someone, you should feel sorry for yourself. Oh, but I guess you've already got that covered.
I am sorry for what I've done. What else can I say to you?
I don't want to make you feel bad.
I just want to show you who you are.
There's something really focused on Angel, specifically Angel, that makes me want to think of the Buffyverse at large and be like, why Angel in this moment? Why is Angel so important to the first? Because obviously Angel's important to the first, but why? What's the reasoning? So we'll get into that conversation more later on, I'm sure. But yeah. So from there, we go to Giles's office, and Buffy's saying that she was in Angel's dream.
Yeah. Not so much dreaming about Angel, which has happened before, but in his dream.
In his dream.
And Giles is like, yeah, I don't know.
That's a new one.
So they decide that they need to find that out, and also find out why he came back, which we never ever find out. So, except that possibly the powers that be did it.
Yeah. So, yeah, they kind of come to an agreement. Giles is a little hesitant, but Buffy assures him that the only way that she's going to be able to put Angel and her relationship behind them is to not be doing guest spots in each other's dreams. So they agree to figure it out. And this is when Xander shows up and is just like, where do we start? I am suddenly totally gonna be like super helpful guy because Hanukkah. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah. And then Willow shows up. And Willow's going to help too.
Oh, gosh. I guess,
and then,
miracles do happen around the holidays.
Yep. And then we have a nice little montage of a really long time of studying. And then Buffy and Willow are kind of talking, and Willow says that Oz is going to come over on Christmas Eve because her folks are out of town and they're going to watch videos.
Yes.
And then later when he comes over, he goes in and he's like, Willow, I got videos. Who says videos? Like, even in the 90s.
Who says clothing? What kind of person would say clothing?
Apparently that is a Sarah Michelle Gellar thing because it is never in the script and she always changes it to clothing. Which I should keep watching. But, like, did maybe it's a Southern thing or something, but I've literally never heard them called videos. It was always like, I brought some movies. You want to watch a movie or a show. I mean, the only time anyone ever said videos was you were talking about like music videos. And I'm pretty sure that's not what they're talking about because he's like going to bring some, Anyway, I just, that hit me as weird. Both times it was said that way.
Yeah.
And then she mentions how awkward and uncomfortable it is with Oz because they just got back together.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
So here's my note on this scene, and it is the worst note, and I hate myself for this, but later on we see that Willow is prepared to have sex with Oz, is ready, right? This is her way of showing how much he is the one for her, and Xander is no longer going to be part of her life romantically, right? That's the whole thing. So you have this line from Buffy that says, Xander has a piece of you that Oz just can't touch. I guess now it's just about showing Oz that he comes first. And I laughed so hard at that line and immediately flashed to Willow saying, I want you to be my first.
Oh, yeah. She took that advice literally.
Anyway, so that's my note for that scene, because I am an adult. Show Oz that he comes first. Okay, so that's that scene. We're back at Angel's mansion. And there's this businessman. So this is it has to be someone that he killed this last time that he was Angelus, right? Like in the last year. But he's just talking about this way in which he arranged all of his family to look like they were sleeping, and then that he came home and was gonna kiss them goodnight and noticed that they were cold and all of this, and it's just woof. Yeah. So that was some of the off-screen Angelus stuff going on in season 2, apparently. And he crouches down and transforms back into Margaret, and kind of continues to talk about how that's what makes him so much different than just other beasts, that he doesn't just kill to feed, he takes all this pleasure in it. Then we go to Daniel, and this is where he drops the bomb that he was going to be married that week, but as he recalls, he knew that, and Angel says, it wasn't me. And then the first transforms back into Ginny and says, it wasn't you? And Angel makes a comment here. A demon isn't a man. I was a man once. And Ginny says, and what a man you were. And then we have a cut that I think is, it's supposed to show just how awful Liam was as well. But it's just like the most comedically shot scene of just him being just hammered and trying to grab at this girl, but is so drunk that he falls off the chair. And it's just, it's one of those scenes that I see and I'm just like, boy, that changed the mood of this. We had all of this horrible stuff, and then we cut to Liam, and he's just just completely trashed and falling on his face. And then we cut back, continuing to explain that Liam was in fact the worst, and Angel continues to try to justify it, saying he was young, he never had a chance to, and Margaret says, to die of syphilis?
Yeah.
And,
so I was like, oops.
Yep. You were a worthless being before you were ever a monster. And it continues to progress, and they just continue laying it on thick. The first is Jenny again saying cruelty is the only thing you have a true talent for, and it's basically his destiny to be an evil thing that relishes in all of those things that it just listed out before him. That's who he is. It is interesting if this was a standalone episode and this was just like some manifestation of evil that existed for this episode to toy with Angel, how a lot of this I think I would enjoy more. But since I know that the first comes back and has a whole plan to take out the Slayer line and, you know, basically take over the world and all of this later on, I'm just like, so what is the end goal here? Instead of just looking at it as the metaphor of it being a manifestation of evil. You know, it's really just the whole idea of, if you look at like Christian mythology and the idea of Satan as this physical being versus Satan as the manifestation of temptation, right? And so like this is this being that has motives and objectives that they're trying to complete at the end of the series as the first evil versus Buffy and gang. But in this episode, the first really exists just as this representation of evil and Angel fighting his own temptation to return to evil. And so part of me kind of wishes that this manifestation of evil was something separate from what we get later, because I think there's parts of this episode I would enjoy more if I just saw the first as this internal turmoil that Angel is fighting and not this villain that we face off against later that kind of becomes a little bit more toothless than I would have liked the first to become towards the end of the show. I think that this portrayal of the first is really effective in the way that it can just mess someone up. And I like the idea of it taking over completely. Like, not just being able to appear as a dead person, but also being able to implant things into somebody's dreaming and waking state. This is what it is slowly doing with Angel. It is like constant. And I love this version of the first, but it doesn't mesh exactly with the version of the first that we get in season 7. So I would have either liked the season 7 first to be more like this first, or them to be completely separate entities.
Yeah.
But this first is super effective. This first, Angel would have died at the end of this episode if it wasn't for the snow. Like, I completely believe that. Like, Angel would have stayed out there until the sun came up. There was no saving him at that point. And it was just the other, like, big power players manipulating things to prevent that from happening.
I have trouble watching this episode now that I have seen season 7.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, like, my reaction to this episode before I saw season 7.
Yeah.
I remember it. I know that it's never been a favorite, and I've always thought it was just a little too dramatic and a little too much filler until you get to season 7 and they actually bring that back.
I will talk a lot about the first in season 7 because I think the first had the potential to be the best Buffy villain, and they just messed up. They just misstepped really hard in a number of ways. But like this version of the first, I really, really like in this episode. I think the first is just about tormenting people. And that's the first's goal, is to just mess with people. And is kind of, it may have a certain goal in mind, but is also willing to take whatever tick in its favor it can get. Which is why later on, when Angel's just like, you won't get me to do these terrible things, I'm just going to kill myself. And the first is just like, okay, well, that will do too. Yeah.
Well, you think for a minute that things are going to like he's doing what he's supposed to do, and she's like, that's not the plan, and then she's like, but it'll do.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh wait, what?
Okay, so again, more artsy like fade transitions, showing where everybody's at the library, including Buffy, who's asleep at the back of the library somewhere, and then we cut over to Angel's mansion, and he's also back in his bed sleeping, and then it kind of goes into dreamland. And some stuff happens. Them making love in the shared dream space. It progresses and eventually ends with Angel biting Buffy. So it's, again, subtlety. It's never been what I would call Buffy the Vampire Slayer's strong suit. But if you want to go back to that scene between Angelus and Margaret, and then come back to this scene between Buffy and Angel, woof.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. That makes me uncomfortable.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Nope.
So that's that scene.
Yep. In our next scene, Angel wakes up and he sits up and Jenny is right beside him and she mentions that he wants Buffy, at which point Angel says no, convincing nobody. And then Jenny's like, yeah, take her, take what you want. And he's like, no. And
pour all that frustration and all that guilt into her and you'll be free. Oh, God.
And then we're back at the library and Willow is asleep. Giles tells Buffy that it's the first, and this is the very first time we hear what it is, the first evil.
Yes.
Absolute evil, older than man and older than demons. And Giles kind of goes into it being transcending all dimensions and all that. Then she sees in one of the books, one of the bringers, the eyeless priests, and mentions she saw him in the dream. And then Giles is shocked she had another dream and asks what it was about. And she's like, yeah, let's not get sidetracked. And they start talking about the bringers, and Giles informs her that she cannot fight the first because it's not a physical being.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, I can fight these priest guys if I can find them. The next day, and I don't know why they wait until the next day to do it, but they go and see Willie.
Yeah.
Willie's bar. This episode is kind of like a tour of everyone.
Kinda.
And, Willie, he warns all his people when she walks in by, saying hi to her really loud.
I like that.
Half the clientele walk out. Then she kind of asks about the bringers and where she could find them. Xander does a really cringy job of trying to be threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And, Willie basically says that they're really scary and stuff's running away from them.
Yeah.
And that they're underground. And Buffy's like, where? And he's like, I don't know. And then he tells Xander that he did great by the intimidation.
Hey, you did great, by the way. I was very intimidated by you.
Really? Thanks.
Let's go.
Hey, kid. Merry Christmas.
And I don't know if it's like the tone of voice or the way he says it, but every time I watch that scene, I'm like, oh.
Aww.
Yeah.
Willie's...
he keeps betraying her, but also, aw.
Yeah, Willie's such an interesting character that I wish that had a little bit more screen time to flesh out. But, just the idea of this bar existing, I feel like the later years of Buffy should have utilized this bar a little bit more. I feel like this is something that they could have grown into and used a little bit more in some of the... Because it's kind of funny that I feel like they almost visit it as much, if not more, in the early seasons than they do in the later seasons. At least Willie is present more in the early seasons. I guess the actor became unavailable. It always remained Willie's place. He was always Willie's. So the funny thing is they leave, complain about it being hot again while they're...
And you're like, why are you so bundled up if it's hot?
But then they're like, okay, great. It's underground somewhere in Sunnydale. That doesn't narrow it down at all. And I'm just like, didn't we just have this conversation 3 episodes ago? Yet magically it narrowed it down to a very specific spot then.
Yeah.
I like when shows point out their own flaws.
Yeah, and then Xander mentions that there's a lot of natural cave formations in Sunnydale.
Yeah, all kinds.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're natural and not created by giant worm demons in the ground.
Yeah. And then they decide they're gonna stop for a little bit and head home for Christmas because it's Christmas Eve. And then we are in Willow's house. And Oz comes in and he's like, I've got some videos. It's again kind of an odd thing to say it. And he walks into candles and romantic music and roses and a couple of bottles chilling in a cooler. And the script book makes sure to say that it's of soda. Mm-hmm. And Willow is sitting. It says that she's sitting on the couch in a slinky dress. Which I guess she is. She's in a slinky red dress.
Yeah, it's still more covered than like Cordelia would be on an average day of school, but it is definitely like noticed by Oz that this was put on for a very specific reason. There's a lot of things I don't really care about the forcing Willow and Oz back together, but dang gosh, if Seth Green isn't just the most charming man ever, and watching this scene just delights me to no end because he just is so uncomfortable.
Yeah, he's pretty uncomfortable in this episode.
He just doesn't know what to do. Oh, so yeah, he goes and sits down next to her, and then we get the Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe by Barry White playing in the background, and he just like absorbs the fact that that's playing, and then kind of turns to Willow and says, you ever have that dream where you're in a play and it's in the middle of the play and you don't really know your lines or the plot?
Yeah.
Which is fabulous, because Willow has in fact had that dream once before and will have it again. Oh, it's beautiful. And so, yeah, Willow kind of just explains that she wants, tonight to be special, and Oz says, how special are we talking? And Willow kind of explains that, we're two mature, younger people, and, we could do that thing.
Yeah, that thing.
That thing, we could do that. Yeah. As two younger, mature people. Oz stands up.
Yeah. And she's like, are you leaving? And he's like, nope, dramatic gesture. Which is awesome.
Yep. And so Willow says that she wants to be with Oz first, and then Oz says that he thinks that they should sit down again, and so they do. And Willow kind of explains that she's ready, and Oz says, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not. And then they do have the conversation, which I feel like is probably known, but it's good to put that out there, that he has in fact been with someone before, but it's not that, it's just that she doesn't have to prove anything to him. And that when they do spend the night together for the first time, when they do have sex for the first time, he wants it to be because they both need it for the same reason. Which, again, I think you mentioned before, way too mature of a response for someone of Oz's age.
It's not really, no.
But they kind of move past the awkwardness, and then they kiss.
It's very sweet.
It is sweet. And I think that, like, the kind of awkwardness before and the awkwardness after surrounding their first time exist as bookends for this weird time where they're separated, because there's that kind of awkward interaction where Oz seemed like he was ready and Willow wasn't really getting the message or wasn't ready because she was with Xander. And then here, Willow's trying to pretend like she's ready, even though there's some forced nature to what she's saying. And Oz is like, well, I'm not. And then when it actually happens for the first time, it's just like the most organic, beautiful thing ever. So
yeah, panicking. Sorry. We're not there yet.
Not there yet. So we're back at the Summers house. Joyce is tending to a fire.
For some reason.
For some reason. It's so festive. And then she suggests that maybe they should turn on the air conditioning. And Buffy kind of zones out as she's trimming the tree, and Joyce says, so Angel's on top again?
Yeah. Buffy's like, what?
What? And then Joyce is holding an angel and a star in her hands, and she's like, which one? Buffy says star. Definitely star.
The doorbell rings, and Buffy goes to it, and it's Faith. And she mentions that her party was going to be a drag, so she decided to come. And Buffy's like, I'm glad. And Faith holds out 2 tiny little presents and mentions that they're crappy more than once. She's kind of embarrassed at what she brought.
Yeah.
And Buffy again mentions how it's not cold. She says, come in from the entire lack of cold.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, why are you dressed for winter? And Buffy says, let me get mine. Hold on. And she runs upstairs. And I kind of get the vibe of how, you know, when you're not sure if you need a present for someone, but you've got something just in case, but it can be used for any number of people.
Uh-huh.
And then that person comes and they have something and you're like, oh, yeah, good. So you have to run and get it. I totally get that vibe from this, even though she might have just had something for Faith in her room.
Yeah.
But I still... Yeah.
Just like that random thing that you're like, hey, I'll hang on to this in case I need a quick gift for someone.
Exactly. And so Buffy goes in her room and Angel is there. And is kind of upset and can't really finish a sentence. He says he has to see her, but he shouldn't be seeing her. And he's got Jenny in his ear trying to convince him to basically, you know, kill Buffy. And Buffy tries to tell him that something's doing this and he has to control it and ask how he can help him because you could tell Angel is just really not doing well.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he screams, leave me alone, and then kind of slides out her window. Like...
Just shoots through the window real quick.
Slithery thing?
Yeah.
It's weird how he leaves. So, and then the next scene we have Buffy having Faith stay there to watch her mom and leaving to go find Angel to help him, whatever. And Faith says, I'll play watchdog. I don't really get it, though. And Buffy's like, I'll explain later. Everything, I promise. Okay. So I was thinking during this episode, you know what kind of counter we should have started in the beginning?
What?
The number of times that Buffy says, I'll explain later, or I can't explain now, or just trust me, I'll tell you later.
Or the amount of times she says, it's a really long story, and then somebody explains it in a sentence.
Yeah. Or she says it's complicated. But, like, I know she says those things a lot, but, like, the number of times she actually tells people, I'll explain later, and then doesn't.
Yeah.
So
this is the true...
a lot.
This is the true evolution of Buffy's character. This is it. I figured it out. I figured out Buffy. I figured out the true message of what all of the writers were going for. In the beginning, she's just, like... short for words when it comes to like explaining things and laying it out and making people understand. And then as she progresses and grows as a leader, then she gives like rousing speech every other scene in season 7. So there you go. Earlier in the series, she's just like, I'll get to that eventually, and then she just saves it all up for season 7.
Gotcha. So she goes to Giles and is like, Giles, find me something I can beat up. And
you could beat up Angel. I mean,
yeah. And Giles she tells Giles about Angel and how he's slipping, and Giles is like, you know, you might have to kill him again.
If you want something to beat up, you might, you know, might be an option. No.
During this scene, I was thinking, you know, she killed Angel to save the world. She was willing to do that. But, you know, in season 5, she's not willing to kill Dawn to save the world.
Yeah.
And she says, basically, that she did it once. She won't do it again.
Yeah.
She's different now, and she just won't do it again. And I've often wondered if she would have done it again to Angel. Or if having to kill Angel to save the world at the end of season 2, that experience made her like, I'm not doing this again, ever. I will not kill someone I love to save the world. Because she's never really put in that position again until season 5. And then the end of season 6, but that doesn't matter because, she's already said it. And we know she's not going to kill Willow.
Yeah. There is another time where that is brought up when Anya is a vengeance demon at the beginning of season 7. Where they have
but that's after she decides it too, though.
Yeah, but she's willing to kill Anya. She may just not care that much for Anya, though.
Yeah.
But she is willing to kill Anya.
Just kind of that, yeah. I mean, I knew that happened and everything, but I never thought about it in this context. And now I'm upset that changed.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, the big difference with the Dawn scenario is that Dawn is innocent in this. Whereas both Anya and Angelus were...
And Willow, for that matter.
Yeah, when Willow were acting...
Made choices.
Yeah, acting against what, Buffy's calling is, basically.
True.
So, from Giles' apartment, we cut back to Angel's mansion, and he's continuing to just fall apart, saying he can't do it, yelling at the First to get away from him. There is a line in here where the First is like, "You were never a fighter, Angel. Don't start trying now." Which is interesting because I think I've talked about the concept of Angel wasn't meant to be a fighter as a physical fighter when they were initially like conceptualizing him, and then he became more and more capable at fighting, and it was kind of written into his backstory that he fought better than I think was the concept when creating his character. But in this context, it's obviously about his fight with addiction and how he is a man of many vices, or was a man of many vices that was turned into a vampire of many vices. And, there's only so long he can fight against that before he is, again, sucked down that path of addiction. And I did mention before that, a lot of people watch this episode as episode 0 of Angel, the series, and this is the kind of stuff that really leans heavily into that, because it's really talking about what a constant struggle Angel is going through to just not be a horrible person, kind of, not allow himself to return to those things that made his life easier. And the metaphors of addiction that roll into that. And so here is the First, again, just leaning heavily on the idea that it's gonna happen sooner or later. Might as well just do it. You're not going to be able to fight this forever. You're gonna eventually return to your ways. It's your nature, kind of stuff. Just, again, reflecting the idea that this is really, in this episode, before they develop the First as its own, big bad villain, this is really, in my mind, more of a conversation that Angel's having with himself than some evil thing having a conversation with him. Like, this is stuff that Angel experiences, this is stuff that Angel internalizes, and this is what Angel's day-to-day life is as the ensouled vampire who is completely aware of his history and also aware of how much easier of a life it was before. She also says that he was born to hurt her, which I think, again, could be just a throwaway line, but also talking about bigger things at play, bigger, like, universe-changing things at play. There may be some truth there that he was born to hurt her, if you're talking about being manipulated by all of these powers beyond. And says that as long as he's alive, basically, that's what his purpose is to hurt Buffy. And that's when Angel just says, "Then I'll die." And Jenny's like, "You don't have the strength to kill yourself." And Angel says, "I don't need strength. I just need the sun to rise." And he walks out, and this is when the First says that line of, "You're not supposed to die. This isn't the plan, but it'll do."
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Then we are back with Buffy and Giles still researching, and mentions that it's like reading the Star, like his books. Then they find the line that is that the harbingers are of death and nothing shall grow above or below. And she realizes
Buffy
at the Christmas tree farm.
figures it out.
Yes. And she goes and opens the Christmas tree farm, which has no security, apparently.
I mean, of all of the places to have security in Sunnydale, this is the one I most buy to not have security, so...
Well, we know nobody really has it.
Yeah, so, you know.
Unless you need a dead security guard.
Yeah.
She grabs an axe and goes to the dead trees and kind of, like, busts a hole in the ground.
Hitting the ground with the axe.
Yeah. Here's my thing. Like, obviously nothing's gonna grow above because there's no ground there. It's like a hole. Like there's nothing. Like
nothing.
It's
nothing
like
for
5
the trees.
and she has a hole.
Yeah, nothing for the trees to take root in. Like, how did those trees grow as big as they did before they died? That doesn't make sense.
Right. So she cuts a hole and then just jumps in.
Yeah. I got really confused this whole scene because I had a vivid memory of Giles being here, but I think it was a scene in season 7 where she returns to this spot after they realize it's the first, and Giles is there during that scene. But I was just like, where's Giles? Giles is in this scene! And then he wasn't. I was confused.
So she finds the harbingers that are still around their candle chanting. This one always makes me laugh, but she goes, all right, 10 more minutes of chanting, then you have to go to bed. And I always like that one. She basically just like knocks out all the harbingers. She doesn't actually kill them. And then we see Jenny, and she says, I'm impressed. And Buffy immediately realizes Jenny is, the evil thing and not there. Which, I mean, she lives in Sunnydale. You would think there'd be like just 10 seconds of Jenny. But she immediately realizes and says you won't get Angel, and Jenny goes into a spiel about how she's evil.
I'm not a demon, little girl. I am something that you can't even conceive. The first evil. Beyond sin, beyond death. I am the thing the darkness fears. You'll never see me, but I am everywhere. Every being, every thought, every drop of hate.
All right, I get it. You're evil. Do we have to chat about it all day?
Which is actually a quote that I used to have on my computer when it did like some function. I don't even remember what it was. I think maybe opening Windows, it would say that. And then Angel's like, you know what? Angel will be dead by sunrise. And Buffy's like, nope. And Jenny says, you have no idea what you're dealing with. And Buffy's like, let me guess. Is it evil? And then Jenny transforms into this thing. And it is the first time in this episode that is like really creepy. Like that is a scary looking head to me. Just kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then it says, dead by sunrise. And Buffy runs out to find Angel.
Yeah. I always thought that the like demon representation of the first was a little cheesy. But for me, the first is the ultimate psychological enemy. And so, like, the first doesn't necessarily have to be physically scary because of the way in which it functions. It's not an intimidating foe in the I don't think I can fight it, because you can't fight it, but it's an intimidating foe in the I don't know how much I can persevere against the relentless nature of being reminded of all of the terrible things I've done and all of the people I've lost. But yeah, I have a lot to say coming up on this next scene, but mostly it's just really dramatic. And there's parts about it that I really love, but I'm also really annoyed because for some reason, I guess when they were filming Buffy's side of the conversation, the camera was slightly out of focus for a good chunk of it. And like, she's just there acting her heart out. Like, you could tell just how much she's putting into that. And she's just kind of out of focus. And it's the most annoying thing for me to watch because of that. Like, there's some really great stuff going on, and there's the melodramatic stuff that we expect from Angel, but the entire time I'm watching, I'm just like, she is out of focus. Why is she not in focus? And that's what I take away from this scene is. I also went to school for photography, so there might be a reason for that. But yeah, so this scene happens. It is Buffy confronting Angel, saying that he has to get inside, that the sun's coming. He's talking about how the kids are probably already awake, waiting for the morning to come, sneaking downstairs to see the gifts and all of that. And he says that, he knows the sun is coming and that the first wasn't haunting him, it was showing him what he is. And Buffy's like, what you were, and he's like, no, that's who I will always be. And he kind of talks about that's the reason he's back, is to be evil. That's the thought process there. Buffy's going on about how just some random evil thing takes credit for bringing you back and you buy it, and he says that he can't become a killer again, and she suggests that maybe, instead just fight, that urge, and he's like, no, it's too hard, and that it told him to lose his soul in Buffy and become a monster again, and that he wanted to do it. He wanted her so badly, even though he knew it would cost him his soul, a part of him didn't care. And they're just sobbing through all of this. Just emotional wrecks, just sobbing. And this is when Angel says, it's not the demon in me that needs killing, Buffy, it's the man. Buffy kind of explains that, if he were to die now, then that's all his legacy is the monster. And he says basically that there's not going to be an easy answer, and he understands, or that she can never understand what he's done, and they start to get forceful with each other. She wants him to go inside, so she grabs him and he jerks his arm free. She punches him and he shoves her back and then grabs her forcefully and screams at her, am I a thing worth saving? Am I a righteous man? The world wants me gone. And then this is where Buffy just, again, breaks down.
What about me? I love you so much. And I tried to make you go away. I killed you and it didn't help. And I hate it. I hate that it's so hard. And that you can hurt me so much. I know everything that you did because you did it to me. God, I wish that I wished you dead. I don't. I can't.
Buffy, please. Just this once. Let me be strong.
Strong is fighting. It's hard, and it's painful, and it's every day. It's what we have to do, and we can do it together. But if you're too much of a coward for that, then burn. If I can't convince you that you belong in this world, then I don't know what can.
And then as she's kind of finishing up her thought there, snow starts falling from the sky. It's a Christmas miracle.
It's a miracle.
And yeah, it kind of cuts between everybody as they're reacting to the snow and such. But before we kind of get to that final tie-up at the end of the episode, let's talk about this scene between Buffy and Angel, which I kind of just rushed through. But
it's
now
a really long scene.
It is. It's like, as I was going through this, I was just like, oh man, I really need to stop and like just talk about this section. But it made more sense to just go through it because it's one of those that is the scene that I think people remember from this episode mostly. I think, you think Amends, you're like, oh, that's the episode with Angel and Buffy on the hill, and the whole the line that always comes to my mind is, am I a thing worth saving? Am I a righteous man line? Like, that always just immediately pops in my mind when I think of this episode. I have some stuff to say about this episode, but I kind of want to let you talk a little bit about this scene first, and then I'll chime in with my weird big Buffyverse stuff.
I kind of feel like when she tells him that if he dies now, like if he lets this happen, all he ever was a killer. That it's kind of like part of his motivation to leave and go to Los Angeles to try to make a difference. Because, I mean, obviously he has to get away from Buffy.
Yeah.
But, like, to start trying to make a difference so that he has a reason.
Yeah.
You know, that Buffy basically is like, yeah, but you can't die now because you haven't done anything.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of always thought that.
Yeah, and it is something to be said that this is obviously a huge character building moment for Angel in establishing his trajectory going into Angel the series and a lot of his motivations going forward and this idea of redemption that he's dealing with. But it also says a lot about Buffy and her view on redemption and, you know, the fact that people can be redeemed and that she is, in fact, an encourager of that in people around her. And we see this several times throughout the series. But the fact that she has that line that she's just like, if you give up now, if you just throw it all away, then yes, that is basically your legacy. You were that that vicious, violent, evil thing. And I know exactly what that was because you did all of that stuff to me. And I am still telling you, as one of your victims, that you can be more, that you can be better, that you have value in this world beyond that. Which is powerful. And I think it may not have, in this emotional state that Angel was in, landed fully in this moment. Because I still am very much a firm believer that if we didn't have the miracle snow, that Angel would have died in this moment because he wasn't budging. But it is something that I'm sure Angel has reflected on many times after. And the fact that this is a motivating moment for him of understanding that Buffy wanted more for him and that fighting is in fact hard and it is every day. Which again is big, like, motifs of Angel the series. Of just you're never done, right? And on your redemption arc, you're never done. There's never a day that Angel's gonna wake up and be like, I did it, I'm done, I'm redeemed. That is an every day for the rest of his existence struggle that he must face. And we see relapses and issues that come of that from Angel throughout his own show. But it is a major focal point of him as a character removed from Buffy. And it's very much established here in this exchange that Buffy kind of set him on that path during this moment. Yeah, so the snow and the big universe stuff that I want to talk about. It's more of a thing that's like fully solidified in the comics. But like Buffy and Angel specifically just have a lot of big players very focused on them and just manipulating them all the time to where it really becomes this conversation of free will and who has free will and stuff like that. So like we don't know for sure who brought Angel back. We don't know for sure who sent the snow. We don't really have any clue on all of this, but we know that something somewhere did these things. And it's interesting because there could be a lot of players. I know you mentioned the powers that be a couple times. One that gets dropped a lot, which I really like the idea of being a player that's working in this moment, is Jasmine. Because the interesting thing about Jasmine is Jasmine rises the same time that the first rises. Because season 4 of Angel coincides with season 7 of Buffy. And so those are two, greater than anything we've seen beings rising at the same time in relative proximity to each other. It's very possible that years beforehand in their manipulation to try to get these players in certain positions, they were, doing these big power moves. And there's a lot of speculation that Jasmine was in fact the one that brought Angel back because she needed Angel in order to get the ancestry right, in order to birth her, which is all over the place. But it is in fact something that has been discussed, and the fact that Jasmine was kind of presenting as this pure being of good and light, and the first is the manifestation of evil, the ultimate first original evil, and the fact that they would be at odds with each other is an interesting thing. The powers that be are even like more mysterious because they're kind of they're framed in the show almost as you don't know whether they're good or evil. You know, you don't have a guiding light there. And then of course
the powers that be,
yeah,
they're kind of neutral.
Yeah,
I've always thought they were neutral.
Yeah, and with that, there's just some weird things where you don't really know what stakes they would have in what events, because they kind of feel like that they don't really care what side anything lands on, so why would they be so invested in some of these characters? And then, you know, you have the senior partners, right? Another, you know, greater than anything in this current dimension that we're dealing with. The senior partners are huge, and they manipulate everybody. Yeah, especially over an Angel, like they have all kinds of control over everything. So like this is, I feel like, the first true time that we really start having this conversation of what's at play here, because there's all these bigger beings out there that play on a completely different level. Like, you know, Buffy's saving the world and all, but these beings work in dimensions. They don't work in this singular world so much as they work across dimensions. And I just think it's interesting that this is kind of the introduction to that, which, you know, becomes a pretty major thing towards the end of the season 8 comics, is when it's kind of revealed that there's been stuff happening to manipulate Angel and Buffy into certain positions to meet the ends of powers beyond this world. And so, like, this is seeds planted for stuff that is realized to some extent in the show, but is also even more realized in the comics, of just like the level of which these godly beings, these so significantly more powerful than anything we've dealt with beings, just move around our characters like they're pawns. And yeah, I thought that was fun. That was where my head went when watching the scene. Is just like, oh yeah, there's a lot of big power plays going on throughout all of this.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never really enjoyed the Jasmine storyline, but it's very much possible just because Angel had to make the decision to go where he was going, and Cordelia had to make the decision to go where she would, you know.
Yeah, and it's weird because like they started
making those
They
started making those decisions this like right about now.
Yeah, because this is the catalyst that brought them both to LA, right? And then Darla comes back, which is also kind of, you know, a crazy, you know, powers beyond this world decide that that's going to be a thing sort of situation. And so there's all of these things bringing together these different characters to do impossible things, because Darla and Angel shouldn't be able to have a child. They do, because magical beings beyond this realm decide that that's going to be possible in order to do what they need done, kind of deal. And so it really becomes a game of like, okay, so what do we know about this impossible event, and who might have been involved with this impossible event, and like how does that become an advantage to this group that we think is aligned in this way, but we don't really know that they're aligned in this way because we don't really know enough about them to know what their motives are and what they're going. So you have like Jasmine and the senior partners and the powers that be and the first and all of these like crazy big larger than life. And I feel like these are bigger than like Glory and Illyria. Like Glory and Illyria have motives. They're gods. They're godlike, you know, beings, and they're above our standard fare of characters that we deal with in episode to episode basis, but they're still a step below those other beings as far as just their ability to really change things on a dimensional scale. So the hierarchy of the power structure of the Buffyverse is a mysterious thing.
Very much, yes.
Anyway, so...
And this is very, very much dramatic.
Oh, yes.
Angel and Buffy. Just what we expect from them.
Oh, yes. Those beautiful, beautiful, melodramatic, over the top. Every line is given with so much angst. Oh, it's beautiful. Mwah. Chef's kiss. And yeah, so one of those higher beings, or perhaps another something, or maybe it was just, weather's unpredictable, but it snows. And you kind of cut through, you see Willow and Oz noticing it. You're at the Summers house, and Joyce and Faith walk out. You got Giles looking out the window, Xander kind of trying to sleep, and then he finally pulls his sleeping bag back when he realizes, hey, that's not usually there. And then you have Angel and Buffy walking down that main street again as the weatherman is talking about how this crazy cold front has come through and you're not going to see any sun today. No sun whatsoever.
Okay, so I have some observations.
All right.
So, first, when they are walking down the road together to the middle of Sunnydale, first, I feel like a lot of people in Sunnydale would have come outside to see this snow that has never happened.
Yeah.
But they're all alone.
Well, no, here's the thing. They've already been through there. Because you could tell just how, shuffled up the snow is. So everybody's already walked through there, messed up all the snow, and then they went back because they were over it, and now Buffy and Angel are walking down the street. There's your answer. Because that's not a clean sheet of snow. That's some really messy snow.
That's my second observation. That in no way, in any way, looks like snow. At all. It literally looks like a California town tried to pretend there was snow.
It's very Christmassy.
Yeah. Okay, so right before that, we have the scene where everyone kind of sees the snow, like you were talking about. And at Buffy's house, her mom and Faith walk out into the snow, looking at it. Why is Joyce fully dressed and wearing a bathrobe?
I didn't even notice.
She's literally wearing a pair of slacks, like khaki slacks, a cream-colored sweater, and a bathrobe over it. And it doesn't even look like she threw the bathrobe on to walk outside.
Yeah.
Because they're just at the front door, and Faith is just wearing a shirt. It looks like it's what she was wearing.
What she was wearing inside.
Yeah, but
she turned on the air conditioner and it got way colder than she thought it was going to. They got really good AC in that house, and then she had to bundle up a little bit.
But dude, turn it off. It's electricity and climate change.
You're a single mother. You can't afford that, right? So here's
anyway. I find that scene every time I see it. I'm like, why is she?
Well, here's the funny thing: is that in the weatherman's forecast talking about the snow and stuff, he says that temperatures will be in the high 30s, and I'm just like.
That snow's gonna melt.
That's still not very cold. That snow one is not gonna stick around very long. I mean, maybe at the amount that it's coming down and the fact that the cloud coverage is supposed to be so dense that you're not gonna see the sun, that it might linger a little bit. But that's still not cold. I mean, maybe it's cold for them because they live in California and they're like, oh my gosh. 40 degrees, freezing. I have to be bundled up when we're talking about it being 70 degrees and scorching. But yeah, that was my note, is that I feel like if they're gonna go for miracle snow, they could have probably come up with a more extreme temperature for it to be than high 30s.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
that was that scene.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yay! I think the main issue I have with this episode is that idea of this is where we want our characters to be, so we're gonna make them be in those places rather than making it really feel earned. I don't feel like any of the stuff that results at the end of this is just like Buffy and Angel are back together, Willow and Oz are back together, Faith and Buffy have reconciled, Giles and Angel, I guess, are coming to some understanding again. There's just I feel like it rushed a lot of things, and then, like you said, still somehow feels like a filler episode, even though a lot happens in this episode. Also, characters just felt weird. Xander's shift to, I'm gonna help because Christmas just felt weird. Especially the juxtaposition of him just being the worst, which is typical Xander at the beginning, to being I know I haven't always been on your side when it comes to the angel stuff, but I'm in Hanukkah spirit, so let's make sure we can save him. And I'm just like, give me something more to work with. I'm okay with that being a character shift, but make it a character shift that's believable and don't just write it off with, it's Christmas time, so we're all gonna work together and be best buds. There's just a lot of things in this episode that irk me in that way. But Hot Giles does return in it, so...
Hot Giles always return.
Next week, we will be discussing Gingerbread, which is also an episode that I'm kind of like, meh.
Yeah, it's got its moments, but it's not great. Helpless after that?
Helpless is after that, yeah.
Yeah, I love Helpless.
Yeah. I feel like Gingerbread's gonna be our last stinker for me. After that, I'm pretty jazzed about what's coming up.
Helpless is the last one I have a script book for.
Uh-oh.
Now, I have discovered I can print scripts off the internet.
The internet is a magical place.
They did not, for some reason, they stopped making script books.
Yeah, I looked that up.
3.
I looked that up on the wiki the other day. It was just canceled. It was in process that they were going to release it, and it was canceled. I guess they weren't making enough money or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I wish they would, because I'd buy them for all 7 seasons.
Oh, I would too.
No. But yeah, they stopped in the middle of season 3.
Yeah.
And I could see like stopping after season 3, but why in the middle?
Money. I'm sure that was why.
Yeah. Well, that was Amends.
Amends. Yep, that was that episode. And we thank you all so much for listening. And this is where we say bye.